Hello, can you hear me?
Stop right.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, so. Go ahead, talk for me.
Hello, can you hear me?
Keep going.
Hello, can you hear me?
Keep going.
Hello, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Hello, 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 hello,
Go ahead.
hello.
All right, now I'm gonna go over to the mixer.
Okay.
And then if I just have you just gently just tap on that. Yes, we go.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Good evening, everybody. We'll be starting momentarily. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Commission on the State of Haiti's third Community Forum of 2024. I want to wish everyone a happy Hispanic Heritage Month and National African Immigrant Heritage Month. I'm a little light housekeeping. I like to just point out that there's some light refreshments. We have some waters in the back and some snacks, so please, everybody, help yourself. And the restrooms are as you come out of the door to your left, and just follow the signs. Closed captioning is available for this meeting. The closed captions can be displayed in English or another language, which will allow you to view an automated live transcript of the meeting in another language. To display closed captions on your screen, please do the following. Click the button labeled Show Captions at the bottom of your Zoom window. Select the box at the bottom of the window labeled Enable Translation. When you see you've enabled translation at the top, select English as a speaking language and select your preferred language in the second menu. Click Save. Automated captions in your selected language should start appearing at the bottom of the Zoom window. To access the interpreter channel, click on the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen. It looks like a little globe. Select either the Spanish or ASL channel. After selecting your language, you will automatically switch to the interpreter's channel for that language. If you wish to return to the main meeting audio, click the interpretation icon again and select off. I'm going to go ahead and start with the land acknowledgement. Sekasin, and good evening, commissioners and public. I am Regina Cuellar, chairwoman of the Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians. It is an honor to offer this land acknowledgement on behalf of the Commission on the State of Haiti. We gathered this evening on the unceded ancestral homelands and waterways of the Ohlone people. Let us honor them by acknowledging, remembering, and elevating the rich cultures, traditions, histories, and luminous futures of the Ohlone tribes of the region who are present in these spaces today and who continue to be the original guardians and caretakers of this land. As we come together in this community forum with the responsibility of eradicating hate and promoting mutual respect among all Californians, let us do so with the utmost reverence and with the best of intentions in a way that pays tribute to the Ohlone people, the ancestors, elders, and descendants. Oh, thank you. So the Commission on the State of Haiti was established to strengthen California's efforts to stop and promote mutual respect amongst California's diverse populations. The commission is charged with researching and publishing data on hate activity, hosting community forums, and providing resources and guidance on how to reduce and respond to hate activity. The community forums, like the forum here today, are part of that effort to give resources to those that are experiencing hate. But most importantly, it's to learn and hear directly from you and how you can help inform the commission in our work to reduce and respond to hate. So please, I encourage everyone here today to speak up and let your voice be heard. Together, we can fight hate and make California a safe place for everyone. I'd like to mention that this is the third community forum for the year 2024. And this is a special forum for us today because it's a joint forum and we're here with the California Civil Rights Council. So I'd like to welcome them as well. The title of today's forum is Inclusive Justice, Addressing Hate and Upholding Civil Rights for People with Disabilities. So I thank you all for being here today. My name is Regina Cuellar, and again, I'm the chairwoman of the Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians. I'm also a seated commissioner on the Commission of State of Hate. I'm here today with my commissioners, and like I said, the California Civil Rights Council. I will be moderating today as well with my commissioner, Cece, who's seated right here next to me, Cece Filer. And we have Council Member Hong and Council Member Chan with us as well that will be helping today. Like I said, I'm here today, and then I have my Commissioner Cece Filer along the rest of the commissioners. I have is Elroy Southers right over here. Thank you, Elroy. And then I have Commissioner Levin, Brian Levin, Commissioner Andrea Beth Damsky, and we have our chair of our commission, Chair Russell Roybal. And I think, did I leave any of my other commissioners out? I think I got all my commissioners, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Denny.
Can everyone hear me okay? Great. Well, thank you so much, Regina, and thank you all for coming to today's important joint forum. My name is Denny Chan, and I am a council member of the California Civil Rights Council. I want to take a couple of minutes just to talk briefly about the council as well as introduce my fellow council members. The California Civil Rights Council is a public body of 7 volunteer members appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate, and housed within the California Civil Rights Department. The statutory duties include promulgating regulations, interpreting California civil rights laws enforced by the department, creating and providing technical assistance to civil rights advisory bodies throughout the state, and holding hearings like the one today, and issuing reports to advance civil rights. The council was created in 2013 as a successor to the former Fair Employment and Housing Commission. I want to take a minute to introduce my fellow council members as well. And I'm just going to go down the list in order here. So we'll start with Chair David Garcia, Councilmember Jonathan Glader, Councilmember Helen Hong, Councilmember Adetunji Aludi, Councilmember Julie Walensky, and also sitting in ex officio capacity as Councilmember and Director of the California Civil Rights Department, Kevin Kish. As a couple of examples of what we've been up to at the California Civil Rights Council, we have recently closed a comment period on proposed modifications to employment regulations regarding automated decision systems. And then earlier this year, actually released updated regulations regarding Government Code Section 11135, which prohibits discrimination in state-funded programs and activities. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Regina to talk about why we're doing this event during this time.
Thank you, Danny. This event is taking place during United Against Hate Week, which is a call for local civic action to stop the hate and implicit biases that are a dangerous threat to the safety and civility of our neighborhoods, towns, and cities. Since its inception, United Against Hate Week has spread to over 200 plus communities throughout California and in communities across the U.S. Before we begin the presentations, we want to remind you that if you are a victim or witness to hate, racism, or bullying, you can report and receive free support from the California versus Hate resource line and network. Trained trauma-informed agents on the hotline will help you identify next steps and help connect you to resources, including legal, financial, mental health, and mediation services. Anyone can report anonymously, and your report will not be shared with law enforcement. Without your consent, unless required by law. Report hate by calling 833-8-NO-HATE or visiting californiaversushate.org. We will put the link to California versus Hate in the chat. We also like to remind you about the free services available for communities throughout the California Civil Rights Department's Community Conflict Resolution Unit. If your community is experiencing heightened fear, conflict, or tensions because of discriminatory practices, hate incidents, or hate crimes, the Community Conflict Resolution Unit may be able to assist. CRU, CCRU, offers a range of conflict resolution services to help communities effectively address hate and discrimination-based community conflict. All CRU services are free, voluntary, and confidential. CRU services can be requested by completing the request for service form online and emailing the form to ccru@calcivilrights.ca.gov. We will put the contact information for CRU in the chat. I'd like to move on to reviewing the process for public comment. First, the commission and council are public bodies, and an important part of being a public body is hearing from the public. To that end, this meeting is open to the public, and there will be opportunities for public comments throughout the meeting today. To keep an orderly meeting, please make sure to comment only on the agenda item under consideration. If you have comments that are not specifically related to an agenda item, please save your comment for the agenda item titled Public Comment on Items Not on the Agenda. To submit a written public comment, email the commission at csh@calcivilrights.ca.gov. We will put the email address in the chat. For everyone in the room today, you may submit a written comment by emailing us or by writing your comment on a piece of paper and handing it to our staff, Rebecca or Kevin. Rebecca and Kevin, can you please raise your hand so everyone knows who you are? Thank you. If you submit a written comment that pertains to an agenda item, we'll read it aloud or summarize it when the public comment portion of that agenda item is open and before any vote. If the comment is not about a specific agenda item, we'll read it aloud or summarize it at the end of the meeting during the agenda item, public comment on items not on the agenda. If you would like to speak at the meeting to deliver your public comment, you will have the opportunity to do so during the public comment portions of the meeting. At the end of the agenda item, we will ask if there is any public comment. We will begin with people in the room with us today and then move on to public comment on Zoom. For those who have joined us in the room, you may request to speak on an agenda item in person by raising your hand during the public comment period, and Rebecca or Kevin will provide you a microphone to make your comment. If you are joining us on Zoom, you may request to speak on an agenda item by raising your hand virtually on Zoom. To do so on a computer, please raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button on the bottom of your screen. If you are on the phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. In the interest of time, we will limit verbal public comments to 2 minutes per person. If you require translation or accommodation, we will grant additional time. After the presentations, we will have time for public comment. Commissioner Filer will facilitate the public comment. As you consider your comment, we want to encourage you to keep a few things in mind. Everyone is encouraged to participate. The foundation of our work is community input, and we want to encourage you to speak up and have your voice heard. We appreciate the diversity of perspectives. This forum was designed to support learning together and the creation of shared understanding. Everyone brings kernels of wisdom based on their own unique history and experiences. We can't know or understand what someone else thinks unless we listen to them. Therefore, when someone says something that challenges your thinking, we encourage you to listen to understand why they think as they do. Maintain a respectful space. Everyone is deserving of respect. That means I encourage everyone to treat each other with kindness and respect today, even if we might disagree. We are very fortunate to have a fantastic slate of speakers today. However, I want to note that the information presented today does not necessarily reflect the views of the Commission, the Council, or the California Civil Rights Department. We have 3 presenters, and then the public comment will take place after all the presentations. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Denny to present the first one.
Great, thank you, Regina. So I have the honor of introducing our first speaker for today. Eric Harris is Disability Rights California's Associate Executive Director of External Affairs, with an extensive career working closely with disability leaders, community members, and elected officials throughout the country to progress change for the disability community. He brings significant local, state, and federal policy experience, having worked for Congresswoman Barbara Lee, the Democratic National Committee, and the California and Hawaii State NAACP. He served on the State Independent Living Council as Governor Newsom appointee and as a board member for the Resources for Independent Living in Sacramento. Eric has also led discussions on disability pride, inclusion, and access on platforms throughout the country. He has spoken at Harvard Law School, the University of California, Berkeley School of Medicine, and at the White House. He grew up in Sacramento, California, and was an elite wheelchair basketball player. And on a personal note, having worked with Eric in a professional capacity, is an amazing, amazing advocate. So thank you for joining us, Eric.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. So first of all, thank you all for having me. It's really an honor to be here. This center actually has a really kind of important space in my heart. I often have celebratory dinners in this center at a restaurant up here. So really, really glad we've celebrated graduations and all those sorts of things. So just really glad to be here. Thankful to the commissioners and also thankful to all of you for being here. So I work at Disability Rights California. Disability Rights California is a statewide organization. We advocate on behalf of all people with disabilities in the state. And we do that in a variety of ways. One tool that we use is litigation. We have a bunch of lawyers and they do all types of litigation, from individual litigation to system-wide litigation. We have community leaders and community kind of organizers who are very active and involved out in the community throughout the state. We have outreach folks. And then the space that I often find myself in is in policy spaces. So typically in the state capitol, being in Sacramento, but also in a variety of other policy spaces, including Board of Supervisors, city halls, all those sorts of things, and of course Congress as well, and in Washington, advocating on behalf of disabled folks. So that's a little bit of context about DRC as a whole. The kind of groups that we or the disabilities that we focus on, it's across disabilities. So we're not just focused on one or any kind of individual disabilities. It's all disabilities. So physical disabilities, mental health disabilities, intellectual and developmental disabilities, sensory disabilities, learning disabilities, literally any disability that you have, and that you're in California. We are advocates for all folks with disabilities. So what I wanted to talk a little bit about, disability is everywhere. Disability is a part of everything. So oftentimes, whether it's elected officials, policy folks, business folks, teachers, whatever it might be, disability is going to be a part of your work, whether you think it might be or not. Disability is everywhere. It's whether it's 1 in 4 of us have a disability, or more, more than that, less than that, it's somewhere around there. But a lot of people throughout the country, around the world, and in California have some form of disability. And if they don't have a disability now, they're likely going to develop one at some point in their lives. So as an example, of course, as we age, you obtain different types of disabilities, maybe hearing loss, maybe vision loss, maybe other, physical disabilities. But as we live longer, and more people, of course, are living longer, you get disabilities as you age. You can also, of course, get disabilities just living life in terms of accidents or different events, illnesses, what have you. Um, so I say all that to say, like, these are some of the reasons why it's super important to think about disability at every space that you're in and include disability in any conversations that you're having, especially as it relates to how we put together policies and how we put together statewide or citywide agendas for vulnerable populations. So that's a really important kind of piece to keep in mind. Um, and unfortunately, even with the Americans with Disabilities Act that passed and was signed in 1990, you have the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, federal law, give students with disabilities opportunities to have equal opportunities in education. You have, I mean, we're in Oakland, Berkeley and Oakland, notorious for being the birthplace of the disability movement. Uh, you had a huge amount of advocacy and civil rights leaders with disabilities in the disability community specifically, but then in other communities as well. You had the Black Panthers who worked with disability leaders. You had other civil rights leaders who worked with disabled leaders. So there's a long history of strong advocacy. Unfortunately, even with all of that, you still have struggles. You still have points where people with a variety of disabilities face discrimination, and it's with all types of disabilities. And we can go through any number of examples, but one in particular is just how we view people with mental health disabilities. Um, People with mental health disabilities are all over the world, all over California, and people have had mental health disabilities forever, right? Um, and for a really long time, even up until today, um, people with mental health disabilities choose not to disclose often because of the stigma that we as a society have placed on people with mental health disabilities. So that's just one example, and how that plays out. Maybe you're at work, you have a mental health disability, you choose not to disclose because you don't want to be kind of viewed differently, treated differently, not given opportunities, what have you. And what happens sometimes, maybe you don't get the accommodations you would have needed that could have helped you do your job better. Maybe um, maybe you put yourself in uncomfortable situations just because you don't want anybody to know that you have anxiety or depression, or any other number of disabilities, mental health disabilities. So that's just a couple of examples on the mental health side. Um, and I think that one of the things that DRC is here to try to do, other advocates in the disability community are here to try to do, is one, to show that disabled people can be in any type of role. At our organization, our executive director is open about having bipolar disorder. I'm open about my disability. Other people in our organization are wanting to talk about it in a way that is from a place of strength and from a place of pride, and acknowledging that that doesn't mean every day is easy. That doesn't mean um, everything's smooth sailing, but it's a way for others to see and recognize that it's okay to talk about your disability, to be open about your disability, to talk about the challenges that your disability might bring. All of these different things I think are really, really important. Um, and when we talk about incidents of hate, oftentimes hate happens in circumstances where perhaps somebody doesn't view another person as fully human, and that can play out a number of different ways, and being fully human can mean different things to different people. Sometimes being fully human means that you are white and that you are straight and that you are a man, and anything other than that, you're not fully human. Therefore, I I am going to go through, putting forward anger, frustration, what have you, And that can play out in a number of dangerous ways. And unfortunately, that mentality, whether it's played out in actual hate incidents or not, is a mentality that needs to change. I'm very proud to be involved in policy work, and I've been doing it for a really long time, and have done it at the local, state, and federal levels, and enjoy doing it. And I still believe strongly that it is one way to positively influence community, positively influence folks' lives. But I fully acknowledge that changing a law doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to be smooth sailing either. We still have a lot of work to do as advocates, as leaders, as community members to change hearts and minds as well. It's so important that at every level, in every space, we make disability and we make differences accepted and embraced and lifted up consistently. And when we do that across the board, from school sites, teachers lifting up disability as a cool thing or something positive, when we do it at business meetings, or when we do this at all different spaces that we're in on a regular basis, where it's not like pulling teeth. It's not some, challenge that becomes super difficult, but it's also not kind of tokenizing disability either. But where it's just part of our everyday, regular way of doing things, the same way that we often, as a society, uplift powerful women who do amazing things, and not to like single out a woman in any particular way, but to acknowledge that we know that being a woman and accomplishing a lot of difficult things is really hard to do. It's much more difficult than it would be for most men to do. So I just think that there are ways that we can talk about disability across the board that send signals to society, that send signals to community to continue to uplift disability and view disability in a positive way, and doing it all the way through, really starting with little kids and talking about disability in a really positive way, including disability in our curricula. Think like talking about leaders and activists, and not just the disability activists and the disability leaders, but all of the leaders throughout history that have had disabilities in their lives. There's so many, and we can rattle off all of them that we know of, but maybe didn't talk a lot about or weren't taught a lot about growing up. So I think all of these are things that go into changing hearts and minds when it comes to disability, so that we don't get to the point where we're just dismissive of certain disability groups, people with a variety of disabilities, and those sorts of things. So, unfortunately, abuse and taking advantage of disabled people is not abnormal. Disabled people, whether it's individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, older adults who have a variety of disabilities, whether it be Alzheimer's or other forms of disability, uh, disabled people get taken advantage of all the time, and sometimes it's um, you know financially, sometimes it's physically. There are all different types of ways that disabled people have been taken advantage of throughout history. And I think this goes to the previous point, that if we view disabled people as fully human, and we view disabled people as equal to all of us who and all of the folks without disabilities, then we would approach some of these things differently. Thank you. Um, and and I think that when we think about these things, uh, changing hearts and minds about disability and acknowledging and understanding how disability impacts our lives differently. Um, Intersectionality is a reality that a lot of people live with every day. I can't not be both Black and disabled at the same time. I'm always going to be both, and my experience as a Black disabled man is going to influence kind of how I think about things, how I go about living life. And people that live at the intersections of disability and race, disability and LGBTQ plus status, and all the different other intersections, hate incidents and hate crimes are often disproportionately at such higher rates for those communities. And it's so important that those communities are at the table and involved in discussions whenever we talk about hate incidents and hate crimes. And unfortunately, and I know, Greg and others who are experts on the data can show how like inconsistent the data plays out oftentimes. Whether it's how do we report this hate incident? Do we report it as a hate crime against a Black person or a disabled person? It's like, well, I experienced both at the same time. This person saw me as a Black disabled person, so we can't put one down to lift up another or vice versa. It's all part of the same thing. And I'll finish with this. I really, really think it's so important, whether it's commissions like this one, whether it's in the state legislature, whether it's in any type of business meeting, it's so important to have disabled people of color, especially at the table from the very beginning. Not after a terrible incident has happened, but from the very beginning so that we can influence how the policies and how the ideas are put together. But thank you again so much for having me. Really grateful for this group and happy to stay afterwards and answer questions or anything after the fact. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. We're going to continue on now with our next speaker, Dr. Karen Nakamura, Haas Distinguished Chair of Disability Studies and Professor of Anthropology at the University of California, Berkeley. Dr. Nakamura is a cultural, medical, and visual anthropologist who researches disability in contemporary Japan and the United States. Her first book was titled Deaf in Japan, Signing and the Politics of Identity. Her next project resulted in 2 ethnographic films and a monograph titled A Disability of the Soul, an ethnography of schizophrenia and mental illness in contemporary Japan. She is currently working on the intersections of transsexuality and disability politics in post-war Japan, as well as a project on disability technology and access, especially in the context of artificial intelligence. She's also runs the UC Berkeley Disability Lab and the Othering and Belonging Institute's Disability Studies Research Cluster. Thank you so much, Dr. Nakamura.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here. I stand before you as a Japanese American Issei. I also identify as someone with a psychiatric disability. I've been active in working on issues around trans queer politics and activism, as well as disability activism for my entire life. I'm very honored to also be part of the UC Berkeley community. I wanted to just start off with thinking about the word hate, because hate is an awful strong word. And I think often we are both hesitant to use it. Eric Harris gave a great example of when do we classify something as a hate crime and who is it oriented towards? I remember an incident happened in Maine when I was walking with my wife, who's also Japanese, along a rural road, and a pickup truck drove by, and somebody rolled down the window and yelled something at us. And I had no idea. I mean, at that moment, I wanted to like run after them and ask them, can you articulate a bit better? Because I feel something towards us, but I'm not quite sure. Was this sort of anti-queer? Was this anti-Japanese? Was it anti-pedestrian? Were you just in a bad mood? And it's very hard to identify, but there is this growing climate. And when I was looking at some of the FBI hate crime data, we all hope that there would be trends that head down, and yet they head up very slowly. And so we live in this climate where incidents are occurring more and more. But what do we exactly call hate? I feel like right now, there's a lot of groups contributing towards piling on more kindlings and piling on more embers. And sometimes those kindling and embers heat up and we get a fire here and there. But when does that constitute a hate crime? And should we only take the appearance of flames to be hate? Or should we take the existence of all those kindling and embers to be that spark, that fuel that can potentially blow up at any point? I'm also really shocked when I looked at the FBI hate crime database to realize that we exhibited a huge spike that wasn't reflected in the national database in California during the 2021 and 2022 period in hate crimes against Asian Americans. And I'm not quite sure what's fueling that. I think all of us in the Asian American community have felt it nationally as well. Stop AAPI Hate put out a press release yesterday where half of Asian Americans have felt that they have felt hatred towards themselves, being Asian American. I think all of us have felt this chill in us. I can feel it in Chinatown, in Oakland. I can feel it in other places. And yet, it's only when someone gets assaulted that we can call that hate, or is there something that's sort of sub rosa under the table that exists? And we can't exactly identify when that happens. It's like that pickup driving by is the landlord who refused to rent to us. Is that because of Asian American bias? Or is it because we said our elderly mother is going to come by and they're like, oh, we don't want somebody who might trip in and cause a property claim or something like that? When exactly do we classify things? Now, when you look at the FBI data a bit more, most of the categories, the majority of them are against race and ethnicity. The next biggest category is sexual orientation, and disability is just a very small component of the classification for hate crimes. And I think Eric Harris did a great job of saying that partly that's a problem with the reporting, how people report. I think when we're encouraged to file, we have to think, well, what was it? And oftentimes, it's only if you are, not everything else that you would check disability. But if you're Asian American and disabled, or if you're African American and disabled, Native American and disabled, often you might feel that, no, actually, this is an incident where I'm going to check my racialized category first and maybe disability last. One question I do have, and so I think it's another, next slide down, thank you. Sorry that the print is so small. So what are the bias types? If you look, it's anti-African American is the top category, anti-gay is next, anti-Hispanic is next, anti-Jewish is next, anti-Asian. And so anti-disability doesn't fall into the top 5. And I tried to see if there are intersectional categories. So Eric talked a bit about intersectionality, a concept that came out of Black feminists who were really upset with, to be honest, white feminists, with the white feminists were saying, hey, you guys are women, you should identify with all the same issues we have. And the Black feminists and third world feminists will say, no, actually, we have our own issues that are very particular to our communities, and you need to incorporate that. You can't just always be taking us for granted. And that intersectionality is really important. I have a hard time trying to find aggregate data with where are people checking 2 or more boxes, and why is it so difficult to find? I also want to note a little thing about defenders, which is the next category, because I think in talking about how the fuel gets built, the media really likes to stoke this idea of racialized categories against each other. And when I look at media reports, it's often framed in that light. When in reality, the majority, by far, I think it's about 45% of the offenders are white in anti-Asian American violence. And if you add up all the other categories, you finally get to a little bit more than 55%. But it is majority white on Asian American violence, not what often the media will portray it to be. But I found this FBI data to be very unhelpful. I think it hides a lot of things. In the next slide, or 2 slides down, there are problems. So that would be the next slide. Sorry, I should say beep. Which categories are elevated, and also the problems within the community. And so particular to Asian American communities is this notion of stigma. There's great stigma on disability as a general category, and within Asian American communities, a lot of stigma around, especially psychiatric and mental health disability. And since I identify as having them, and when I talk to Asian American communities, it is a big shock for people to have someone who is out about having a psychiatric disability. It's not something that's very common. And so, whether and this comes out of a lot of Asian cultures where it's stigmatized, or within our just practices, disability is viewed as a karmic responsibility. So it reflects bad things about the ancestors, and so one's family as a whole gets stigmatized. So it is very difficult within Asian American communities to talk about disability. There are also more modern things that disability is often, in some communities, the result of, for example, toxic poisoning, the use of Agent Orange in huge amounts during the Vietnam War. And so the legacies of that as well. So we all carry in our bodies and our minds these toxic burdens of the past, whether it's our culture, whether it's the legacies of the wars that we've been through. And so there are these particular difficulties. This makes pan community alliance difficult. Oh, can we skip down to psychiatric mental disabilities and Asian Americans? So, sorry. One more. Yeah. So there are stigmas, there's underreporting, undercategorization for sure. I am sure that there are a lot of incidents that happen. If you have a psychiatric disability and something bad happens to you, you're not going to report it. And part of that I want to push to, the problem is also with the police. Police interactions are very deadly to people with psychiatric disabilities in the US, regardless of your race, but especially with your race. And so data has found one state had 25%, another state had 29% of people with mental disabilities have an arrest record. So we're mixing with the criminal justice system in very particularly bad ways. 1/4 of people shot by police have a serious mental illness. The US has a really bad system where we only have one number, 911, to call for help. Other Asian countries have two numbers, one to call for police and one to call for fire ambulance. And that's a much safer thing. I wish we had two numbers so that we could particularly direct responses. There are organizations, as brought up by the people who introduced, who are trying to push for other numbers to call, but I'm hoping that we at some point modify the 911 system so we don't have a joint number. I think that would be much safer. There's huge overrepresentation of people with psychiatric disabilities in prisons and jails. So we're all very proud that we closed the asylums, but now the two largest mental health care facilities in the US are Cook County Jail and LA County Jail. All we've done is replace our asylums with prisons, and I don't think they are any better. And when you look at the intersectionality of race and mental illness in the prison system is shocking. So we need more study. There's clear understanding of that effect of what it means to be living with disabilities, and especially psychiatric disabilities in the US across various racial and ethnic categories. Native American communities are also heavily impacted by this. And within a lot of communities, it's very difficult to talk about it. The communities are very small, very tightly bound. There's the sense that you have to be strong against the world. And so showing disability can be a sign of a weakness that makes it difficult to talk about. So my last slide is, what can we do? Well, we really need to work within our communities. I have Asian American communities here, but we really need to work within our communities to reduce the stigma, to allow people to talk more about it, to increase the social inclusion of people with disabilities and on all categories. We need to really encourage the reporting of hate crimes, as well as those sub rosa, the things that sort of just fly slightly under the screen. And increase the ability for us to be encouraged to check multiple boxes. I think, again, we are often encouraged to just check one box, or we only feel like certain about one box and we're not certain about other boxes. We need to work with our police and other law enforcement agencies, and this is really hard. There's so little trust between, I think, many communities of color and law enforcement, but we need to work with them to increase their understanding of our communities. You know, what does mental health in Asian American communities look like? What does it look like if you don't speak English and you're in psychiatric distress, right? So that the police know, because right now we still only have 911. And we're not just calling the ambulance services. So we need to increase their knowledge of us, as well as we need to educate within our communities. So many Asian American communities are recent immigrant communities. And so we need to educate them about the American system. What happens when you call 911? What does a police officer expect of that interaction? Many people don't expect a police officer to shoot your child who's having, an incident, but that is often what police officers would do in the US, which comes to as a surprise to many immigrants. So we need to educate law enforcement, we need to educate ourselves. And finally, we need to create more alliances. And this is where it's really wonderful to see these two organizations clearly exemplifying the diversity that we see in California. I'm very proud to be a new Californian. I see an incredible amount of opportunity here, but at the same time, I look at those statistics and California setting above and beyond in terms of hate crime incidents really chills me in a way. So I hope we can all work together to create a better California that includes all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Karen Nakamura. Next, I have the pleasure of introducing our final presentation. Greg Dugier is with the Civil Rights Advocate of the ARC of California, a major intellectual and developmental disability organization, a member of the California Alliance of Retired Americans Legislative Committee, and serves on the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism's Advisory Board. As a California Senate Office of Research Consultant in 2004, he published Protecting Californians from Hate Crimes, a progress report. His findings included, there is no evidence that California's limited efforts to use hate crime laws, in particular to protect these persons with disabilities, have had any effect. He then drafted Assembly Bill 1234 of that year, signed by Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, enacting California's comprehensive hate crime law. This year became the public policy director of the ARC and United Cerebral Palsy California collaboration in 2009. In that position and as a volunteer after his retirement in 2018, he drafted further legislation on hate crimes and senior and disability victimization. He then organized large, diverse coalitions of community groups to successfully move the bills through to signature by Governors Schwarzenegger, Edmund G. Brown Jr., and Gavin Newsom. He has served as a subject matter expert advising the state Commission on Peace Officer Standards and training on numerous police training and policy development projects, spoken on hate crimes to the California District Attorneys Association, and published 2 articles in the CDAA newsletter. Thank you, Greg, for being here today. Welcome.
Thank you. Ken Harris and Professor Nakamura have inspired me. I'm going to come out right now. I've never said this in public before. I'm a person with a disability. I have attention deficit disorder. I've never mentioned it because of the stigma, and I'm nervous about saying it, but I think I need to. Thank you to the Civil Rights Council. Thank you. Thank you to the Civil Rights Council and the Commission on the State of Hate for convening this forum, the first of its kind in California, and to the Civil Rights Department for arranging it. I was especially glad that you're looking for, to be told that you're looking for information that could lead to you recommending actions to the policymakers. I note that that was exactly the principal argument that Assemblyman Bloom and Professor Levin used to lobby the bill to get it to create the commission, to recommend action. My presentation looks at the crime part of the larger problem of hate and discrimination against adults and children with disabilities. Crime may be the smallest part of the overall problem, but maybe it's also the most damaging, most harmful. I focus on the failings of the criminal justice system. We've also made some progress over the last several years, in recent years, which I can only touch on because of the time, and I will mention at least one though. Likewise, I'll only be able to refer briefly to a few of the realistic policy recommendations that I hope you'll consider, and I will get you more information in writing on those. Nationally, the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics in 2018 reported that people with disabilities had a rate of violent victimization more than twice as high as for people without disabilities. Persons with cognitive disabilities, such as dementia, mental illness, ADHD, and intellectual disabilities, had a rate of violent victimization more than 4 times people without. A National Public Radio investigation in 2018 found that adults with intellectual disabilities are sexually assaulted at a rate of 7 times higher than those without disabilities. According to that report, there is reason to believe that predators target people with intellectual disabilities because they know that they are seen as easily manipulated and will have difficulty testifying in court later. This confirmed earlier California reports, including one of a sexual predator overheard telling another to get a job in a developmental disability facilities where the residents are, quote, easy pickings, close quote. Now, how well is law enforcement responding? One national study surveyed people with disabilities and their families in 2013. Of the cases in which victims reported abuse to authorities, more than half said nothing happened. According to the victims and their family surveys, the number of alleged perpetrators arrested was 7.8%. 7.8%. The study didn't cover the number of the convictions. Again, those are national figures. And they're grim, but they're not as grim to me, anyway, as the calls we get at our office in Sacramento all the time from people who feel they've been victimized in one way or another, criminally or otherwise, and can't find anyone to help them. It's heartbreaking when we have to tell them we can't either. Also here in California, a UC Irvine and University of Connecticut evaluation of the state hate crimes with disabilities, crime victims with disabilities initiative, stated the problem starkly. Quote, across a variety of studies, the officially reported violence against persons with disabilities is simply alarming. Moreover, the evidence suggests that officially reported violence against people with disabilities and criminal victimization of people with disabilities more generally is merely the tip of the iceberg, as most violence against people with disabilities goes unreported. Lack of reporting occurs for a variety of reasons, including that the criminal justice system cannot or will not serve those with disabilities. Therefore, it is appropriate to refer to people with disabilities who are victimized as the invisible victims. As such, they have historically and in the present day been systematically denied access to justice via the criminal justice system, close quote. In evaluating the Crime Victims with Disabilities Initiative, the university report found that, quote, overall, the program was successful in increasing awareness of the needs of crime victims with disabilities, increasing the number of reports of crimes against people with disabilities, and increasing the number of prosecutions and convictions involved in crimes with disabilities, unquote. You may think I'm talking about a bright spot in the crime picture. I'm not. Let me ask for a show of hands. Have any of you ever heard of the State Crime Victims with Disabilities Initiative before? One, okay. I'm not surprised. Almost nobody's ever heard of it. The legislature created it in the year 2000. Unfortunately, but frankly, typically, Governor Davis and the legislature not only defunded it in the 2003 budget crisis, but repealed the statutory authority before even receiving the evaluation that I've been quoting from. A lot of studies sit on shelves. This one never even made it to the shelf. Disability groups have made several efforts over the years to revive the program. No state agency has ever responded. Let me tell you about another successful program that was terminated. Attorney General Lockyer created what he called the Face It, It's a Crime public awareness campaign. It involved TV ads encouraging reports of elder and disability abuse. TV ads encouraged people to report, including a statewide number to call. People who worked in the program reported that a steady stream of calls, which stopped when the ads were stopped. The disability groups a few years ago asked the Department of Justice to revive the public awareness campaign. We never received an answer. Up to this point today, I've talked mostly about crimes in general. Let's focus more now on financial abuse, sexual assault, and hate crimes. I'll start with financial abuse. This is nationally again. Academic studies confirm that the common sense observation that aging affects human decision-making ability, and older adults are more likely to fall prey to financial abuse of all sorts. A 2015 study found that financial literacy scores declined by 1% per year starting at the age of 60. Yet, these declines in older adults' ability to manage their own finances, our own finances, have almost no effect on our confidence in our ability to do so. Crooks and con men know that. Even knowing those facts, it's shocking that the financial abuse costs older adults throughout the country more than $36 billion a year. $36 billion a year, according to a landmark 2015 study. Again, that's national. Here in California, people of any age who are financially abused, among people of any age who are financially abused, the incidence of death goes up threefold. This is according to a 2019 analysis of State Department of Social Services data. I believe you'll hear more about financial abuse later today. Let's go next to anti-disability hate crimes. Nationally, a 2019 comparison of FBI data on police reports and the Bureau of Justice Statistics data based on crime victim surveys, comparing the reports by police by the reports of the victims, found that police reported less than 0.5% of anti-disability hate crimes. In other words, police across the country reported less than 0.5% of these crimes, according to these federal statistics. I'm sure we do somewhat better than that in California. But in 2001, Attorney General Lockyer's Civil Rights Commission on Hate Crimes held public hearings throughout the state. It found that the most underreported hate crimes were anti-disability and anti-gender. And the term anti-gender in 23 years ago, I think just meant anti-female. Last year in California, police reported just 18 anti-disability hate crimes. That doesn't sound like much. 12 of them were anti-physical disability and 6 were anti-mental or cognitive disabilities. As someone who's been involved heavily in the intellectual disability community, a subset of the larger mental or cognitive disability community, I feel safe in assuring you there are a lot more than 6 anti-mental disability hate crimes in California last year. I will note that reporting those 18 anti-disability hate crimes last year probably does reflect the progress we've made alerting law enforcement of these crimes. Not long ago, it was 4 per year. I told you I would cover one actual bright part. Here it is. In 2019, the California Alliance for Retired Americans and the ARC and United Cerebral Palsy California Collaboration, with support from a broad coalition of senior and disability groups, sponsored the Senior and Disability Justice Act. The legislature passed it unanimously, and Governor Newsom signed it. The bill requires most, required most local law enforcement agencies to adopt a senior and disability victimization policy guiding their officers. The policy is to include mandatory response to every report of senior and disability victimization. No more, we called and nothing happened. Detailed procedures for handling the call, and that training that includes available training from Post that had never, that in the past not been available but had not been required, including how to deal with people with disabilities that Professor Nakamura was talking about. Outreach to older adult and disability communities to encourage reporting and cooperation with law enforcement, and as I mentioned, mandatory officer training. Then last year, we convinced the legislature to pass and the governor to sign another bill requiring virtually every local law enforcement agency in California to adopt the policies I was just describing. It became law on January 1st of this year. Big accomplishment. It's all very good news. And it appears to me that most of the agencies have adopted some version of the required policy. The challenge is that, to my very limited knowledge, it looks like none of them have adopted the full policy. So, turning back to my call to action, I call on the Commission of the State of Haight this year to work with disability and senior groups, particularly the bill's sponsor and Disability Rights California, to develop and recommend a bill in next year's legislative session to hold law enforcement agencies fully accountable for adopting the full policy. And we have some ideas how to do that. That recommendation addresses how that recommendation addresses the law enforcement piece of the crime problem, but much more needs to be done concerning the overall crime problem, going beyond what the police do. I believe we need a comprehensive plan. Also in 2019, 21 disability and senior groups gave the Newsom administration 26 recommendations for a senior and disability victimization component of the master plan on aging, which the administration had announced would also cover people with disabilities. While not completely comprehensive, here it is. It covered a lot of the problem. A good bit of what I've talked to you about today, it comes from this document. Perhaps the administration felt overwhelmed by everything we've asked for. Right? Well, you can hardly blame them. We asked for a lot. And if we're trying to make it comprehensive, we need a lot. But none of our recommendations made it into the master plan on aging. This is despite the fact that in preparing for development of the master plan on aging, one survey found that the highest ranked goal of California voters selected was, quote, increased prevention of elder abuse, both physical and financial, close quote. The administration did refer our recommendations document to the new Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council. 3 years later, that council has yet to take it up, despite efforts by 2 members of that council who represent groups that signed the document in 2019. While that doesn't make us happy, in fairness, I have to say that the coordinating council and the Department of Aging that staffs it simply don't have the resources and aren't structured to be able to deal with developing the kind of comprehensive program we've sought. So now I'm bringing it to you, even knowing that the Commission on the State of Haight and the Civil Rights Council and the department probably also don't have the resources or the structure to develop a comprehensive plan. Fortunately, there is a state agency that has the resources and the structure, the Little Hoover Commission. So I'm asking the Commission on the State of Haight to recommend that the Little Hoover Commission undertake the task, including, but not limited to, looking at the recommendations from the 21 recommendations from the senior and disability groups 5 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg, and all the other presenters for presenting today. We're gonna go ahead and move into public comment. I'm gonna hand it over to Commissioner Feiler.
Okay, thank you to all the presenters. I want to remind everyone that we encourage you to participate. We appreciate the diversity of perspectives, and we'd like everyone just to maintain a respectful space when they're making their comments today. And let me just go over really quickly again that the beginning public comments are related to the presentations that were made. We will start with public comments from the public, and then we will move into comments from our commissioners up here today. So why don't we start with in the room, if we have anyone. Okay, so Rebecca or Kevin, if you want to start with, why don't we in the front row start with public comments? And again, we're keeping the comments to 2 minutes, please.
I think, oh, there it goes.
Go.
Someone had to turn it up. I'm Sheila Gunn. I'm the Emergency Preparedness Coordinator at the Center for Independent Living in Berkeley. And the gentleman sitting next to me is an advocate at the Community Resources for Independent Living in Hayward. Between the two of us, we represent both of the Alameda County Independent Living Centers. I am a white woman and I am 52. I don't care who knows it. Short hair. I'm wearing a pink sweater. I have a black purse and I'm wearing a blue leaf that is made of sodalite and sandals and purple pants. By the way, when you get to Zoom comments, if anyone wants to raise their hand, the key command is Alt-Y on a PC. It is Option Y, I believe, on Apple keyboards, and the different apps act differently. Anyway, there are only a few times when I will use the word hate. I hate being grabbed. It happens all the time. People are bound and determined that they're being helpful. Instead, be an alpha. Ask, listen, follow, repeat. Ask someone what they need. Listen to what they say. Follow the instructions. And if you didn't understand, ask them to repeat them, or if there's multiple sections of what happens. I would say I hate ableism from anywhere, including me. It happens. It happens to everybody. I think that we need to think about changing things. Like, I hate inaccessibility. I want it stamped out all over the universe. That's a tall order. I've got a TARDIS. I think I can do it.
I'm going to ask you just to wrap up comments. We want to give a chance to everyone. in the
And
room.
that's about it. No, I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, we're doing 2 minutes. I think. Okay. Thank you for that, Greg. Okay. Well, we can do 3 minutes. If that's what people prepare, just let me know that. And my apologies that we switched it on you today. Did you want to? I'm sorry.
I'm ready to go.
Okay.
So I'm not going to repeat my title. This is Warren Cushman. Sheila already did that for me, so I don't have to do that. I want to say hi to Eric, first of all. I am an advocate, and so my day job is policy advocacy. I'm a policy guy. But what I want to talk about is attitude. Now, I deal with all kinds of laws and policies and, change making in the policy arena, and that's hard enough to do. But when we're talking about changing attitudes, when we're talking about getting into people's minds and hearts, as I think Eric said, that is way tougher, because in my view, this is just what I think. When you really get down and dirty on that. It's a one-on-one exchange. You need to interact on a one-on-one basis and have that one-on-one exchange in order to change that heart or that mind. You know, there's 8 billion people on the planet. Wow. When you think about that, that's a pretty tall order. So that was a comment I had. I also want to say that bullying for me as a child was significant. And for most of the blind individuals that I'm close to, bullying was significant. Stigma is also a challenge for me. For most people who know me in the policy arena, they know me as a blind person, but I also have a mental health challenge. I also have bipolar disorder. So, you know, these things are real, and yeah, the struggles are real. I just wanted to say to Dr. Nakamura, in the mental health community, they are hoping to make 988 the new number. And so take a look at 988. It is a national number now. So hopefully that will work. There's still a question as to what the relationship between the 988 folks and the law enforcement folks are. And that's something that seems to be a local, jurisdiction by jurisdiction discussion. So with that, I will hand it to the next.
Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing up the 988. I wanted to mention that because I know in Los Angeles, we're really pushing that. Okay, I think in the second row back there.
Thank you. We would like to thank commissioners and council members and our esteemed speakers today. I'm a big fan of you three and you all, and thank you to the Civil Rights Department. I'm Sheridan Nicolau with the California State Council on Developmental Disabilities. Thank you, Sheila. And we are an independent, federally funded state agency, work very closely with the community and with partners like the California Civil Rights Department to do a variety of things around protecting and advocating and advancing civil rights for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And much of our work is cross-disability as well. And this includes technical assistance, training and advocacy, as well as policy and legislation in the state of California. Many of our partners are here today and partners outside of the room as well. Part of our work includes training law enforcement with crisis intervention training, training on 988 initiatives in the expansion of these efforts, as well as other parts of the criminal justice system. Just wanted to commend the work that's happening. So glad that this community forum is here today. And we are always happy and willing to continue to work with our partners here today, with the department, with the commissioners and council members to advance policy and practice across California that impacts all Californians with disabilities. And as has been mentioned several times so far this evening, the importance of having people with lived experience front and center, leading change through practice, through policy, through training, and through sharing their lived expertise. That is critical. And we do that through the statewide self-advocacy network, our self-advocacy advisory committee, and our relationships with thousands and thousands of Californians with IDD and other disabilities. So let's continue to do the good work together, and thank you all.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in the room, in the back row here?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I just had a comment here in terms of employment. So in regards to employment, it's a bit sticky because, people who experience like bullying in the workplace, that's usually not protected under the law, which is, like you're only protected if it's only based on the protected class, but like reporting bullying, but deep down like, oh, they're probably bullying because you're protected class, but they don't do it, straightforward. So it's a bit, weird situation. And then also to the topic of severances as well, like if you get laid off, but you got laid off because you're protected class, but then you sign off all your rights via severance, but then the average person, they don't know what that includes in the general release form, such as myself. I had to sign a severance because I got laid off, but I know I got laid off due to I disclosed a medical condition that I had. But given, given that it's really hard to, uh, voice your concern with the Civil Rights Department. Why? Because you signed a severance. And, most people, they don't have the luxury to speak out. Why? Because they signed that severance in exchange for compensation and benefits. So I'm not sure what the Civil Rights Department is doing to making sure people's rights are protected if they sign that severance. And it's really common in the tech world. I'm from, I work in the tech industry, and like it's a big thing to sign severances once you get laid off. So it's really hard to speak out like you know, the unlawful things that happen to you, and it's hard to speak out. But yeah, it's just a comment, yeah, because severances are very common in the tech world, but it's really hard for people to speak out, and they aren't unable to use the Civil Rights Department to like report what happened to them.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room like to make a comment or a question? You can also write it down and hand it to Kevin or Rebecca if you would like them to read it. Oh, go right ahead.
Hi, hello. My name is Jonathan. I really didn't have anything prepared when I came here today, but after hearing what all the speakers had to say, I think a couple things has resonated with me. Just a couple of questions just for the people in this room and the community that is here. I guess that I just had some general concerns in regards to mental and intellectual disabilities for the unhoused communities that are being displaced throughout California, and how housing affordability is impacting our communities, and how are we policing this, or how are we correcting these actions when our communities and our political leaders are displacing people with disabilities. And I guess the second thing that kind of came to mind was during the pandemic, prior to vaccinations, a lot of people with disabilities, especially intellectual disabilities, who didn't have that they were unable to bring people into the hospitals when they needed to seek treatment. How are we protecting them from for them miraculously having signed DNRs without having people advocate on their behalf? And then also taking away personal equipment such as respirators for folks that are disabled for people that are not. So I guess the quality of life is given prioritized to other people that are not disabled.
I don't know if that's a question one of our speakers wanted to take. That was a question to all of us, I think. Okay, and maybe one of our speakers, if you'd like to respond to that. Eric?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I can speak about a couple of those things. So,
Thank you. Yeah.
you guys can-
No. Yeah.
Thank you. You guys can hear me now? Great. So I can talk about a couple of those things, at least from the standpoint of Disability Rights California and some of the advocacy work that we're involved often in. So as far as when the pandemic initially started, disabled people around the world were very concerned, knowing that disabled people are going to be the most vulnerable, and immunocompromised people are going to be the most vulnerable. And especially when we looked at older adults with disabilities being super vulnerable, people with disabilities without healthcare being super vulnerable, of course, people who are unhoused being super vulnerable. So we spent a lot of time working closely with like policy folks from throughout the country, including in Washington, D.C., and including in Sacramento, in state government, to really make sure that disabled voices were included in any type of strategy. And ultimately, when we got to the point of having vaccines available for folks, to make sure that disabled people were a priority for being able to get access to the vaccines. So, and there were a lot of other, it wasn't just DRC, of course, it was a whole bunch of organizations, many of whom are in this room pushing for just that. The independent living centers pushed hard for that. The California Foundation for Independent Living Centers pushed hard for that. So a lot of disability leaders and advocates were really trying to ensure that disabled folks not only had access to the vaccines, but in some cases, because a lot of disabled people can't leave their homes or couldn't leave their homes, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, making sure that they had vaccines brought to them, all the different things like that. And as far as how the state and how local governments right now and over the last, I'd say, at least 5 years, we could probably look back a lot farther, but at least the last 5 years have been strategically going about kind of treating people who are unhoused with a variety of disabilities in a way that that isn't helpful to them ultimately. I think advocates on all sides of the discussion might have different kind of views on what is actually helping people who are unhoused with a variety of disabilities. But in a lot of the work that we do, we work directly with peers and people with lived experience and people who've experienced homelessness or who are currently experiencing homelessness. And not only do all of them say that forced treatment and forced kind of being put in different places is not helpful for them, but all the data seems to point to, and science behind it and all the rest seems to point to, if you are a person living with mental health disabilities and you do live with crises, that being forced into circumstances that you don't want to be in, especially when it comes to medications or otherwise, are not ultimately helpful and actually can be pretty harmful for those communities. Of course, a lot of elected officials and people who are making these decisions disagree with that. And ultimately, over the last 5 years, whether it's been, CARE Court followed by SB 43, which was the expansion of the definition of gravely disabled, or Prop 1, which was, of course, the ballot measure from earlier this year, and then on and on. It's kind of an ongoing cycle, and a lot of mental health peers are kind of nervous about the direction that the state is going. So hopefully more people with lived experience, especially people of color with lived experience, are at the table when these decisions are being discussed from very early on, and then we can have really positive discussions about solutions that actually the folks who are going through crises really want. So that's kind of a little bit about
Thank
both of
you
those.
so much. And you know what? If you want to continue this discussion afterwards, let's do that because you brought up really important points. I just want to mention, in response to a comment that was made earlier, that if you believe you are a victim of discrimination, consider filing a complaint with the CRD on their website. Really important because we need to document all of this. Not easy, but I encourage you all to do that. Is there any other comments, questions in the room? Anyone else? Okay, sure. Well, yeah, Mike's coming back. I don't.
Please. Fiddle with it till it works.
Oh,
There you go. So I just want to expound on Eric Harris's comment in one way. There is, whether you're talking about housing policy, mental health policy, transportation policy, many of these decisions are local and regional. So, there certainly is the federal level, and Eric works a lot at the state. He's based in Sacramento, and he does a lot of legislation at the state level. But the local advocacy at the local levels is critical. And I would recommend, if you have housing issues or mental health issues, I serve as a member of the Mental Health Advisory Board of Alameda County. And we deal with all of what Eric just talked about, Prop 1 and grave disability and care court. And one of the things we don't hear much of is we do not hear from developmental disability folks. We don't hear from different types of disability. Oftentimes I'm the only disability voice in the room. So, that sort of thing needs to change. The same is the case with housing. A lot of jurisdictions at the local level deal with housing elements, and all the housing elements throughout the state of California are prime time this year. So that's a place where you can actually talk about housing policy and moving the needle. So I do encourage folks to actually engage at the local level. Thank you.
It's really valuable. Thank you for sharing that. We have more comments. Okay, great.
This is Karen Nakamura again. The previous commenter had mentioned medical triaging and the crisis moment that COVID brought. But I wanted to add on that even though the crisis moment of COVID has passed, that medical triaging for people in the disability community is something that we faced way before COVID and something that we face now. I don't know how many of our disability elders have died because of medical neglect. The most recent case or most famous case that's recent might be Stacy Milburn Park, who died because of medical neglect. But so many of the other elders, and by elders, I mean people in their 30s, 40s. By the time you get to be 50, if you're a person with a disability, you're really old in the community. And this is something that needs to be talked about, that hospitals will deny us. They'll say, we're not set up for treating someone like you, or you need to come back at another time, or you need to see a different kind of specialist, or we really haven't thought about what type of medications are appropriate for your situation. And this is that sort of normalization of discrimination that's sort of built into the system. If the system is built for one type of person and it's not built for other types of people. And we need to resolve ways to make sure that even living in normal conditions, regular times, that those biases get uncovered. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in the room? Any more comments in the room? Did we have any questions that were handed in to you, Rebecca or Kevin? Okay. Do we have any questions or comments on Zoom? Okay, let's go ahead. Oh, your mic's not on. We're having some mic issues. Sorry, everyone.
Arabelle Molinas. Hi there, my name is Arabelle Molinas. I'm a staff attorney at California Advocates for Nursing Home Reform. CANNER is a nonprofit advocacy organization. For over 40 years, CANNER has advocated for the well-being of residents of long-term care facilities and worked to protect older and disabled adults from physical and financial abuses. We have sponsored consumer protection legislations, worked extensively with law enforcement agencies and civil attorneys to prosecute financial elder abuse cases, and undertaken consumer education campaigns to prevent financial elder abuse. CANNER strongly recommends that the urgent need for improving laws that allow for increased prosecution of financial abusers. This call for action underscores the crucial role of legal professionals, policymakers, and advocates in advocating for these necessary changes. We recommend the following, which we also provided extensive input in the recommendations for a senior disability victimization component of the Master Plan on Aging. One is to amend the Penal Code, Section 368, to add undue influence. First, currently there's no undue influence under the Penal Code, which is a common and insidious means to take a vulnerable person's funds or assets through persuasion, domination, and threats by someone who assumes a position of power or trust. While victims or their representatives can pursue a civil case under Cal Civil Code Section 1575, they often struggle to bring these cases to court. Victims typically cannot find attorneys who will take their cases if their damages are of low value, or even if they can, they are unable to afford the attorney's fees and court costs because the abusers have depleted all their funds. Perpetrators continue to commit crimes with impunity against vulnerable individuals. As such, we recommend that undue influence should be added to the Penal Code so district attorneys and AGs can prosecute these abusers. Secondly, we specify that the older adults and dependent adults have a civil right to be free from abuse under the California Elder Abuse and Dependent Adult Protection Act, commonly known as the DACPA, under Welfare and Institutions Code Section 15600. The abuse of an elder or dependent adult, which are protected classes, should be a violation of the victim's civil rights. And thirdly, to amend the assisting liability section of the DACPA, under section 156.110.30 at Welfare and Institutions Code, to clarify that a person or entity is liable for financial elder abuse if they knew or should have known that their conduct assisted a third party in carrying out the fraudulent scheme. Currently, case law dictates that plaintiffs must demonstrate that a person or entity has actual knowledge of or intentionally assisted in carrying out the fraudulent scheme. This high standard makes it difficult for victims to sue entities such as banks in court for liability under a DACPA, even if they can show facts to support that entities were willfully ignoring signs of financial elder abuse.
Thank you. We're going to need you to wrap it up.
Thank you. That's all.
Oh, okay, sorry. It's quite an echo. Is there anyone else on Zoom with a question or comment? Okay, Monica.
John Brady.
Hi, John Brady here. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. My name is John Brady. I'm the director of Lived Experience Advisors. We are a group of formerly homeless and homeless individuals here in San Diego that advocate for solutions to homelessness and work within our system. Our membership sits on over 41 different boards, committees, and commissions nationally and locally. And I sit on the COC executive committee as an officer of the COC. I'm calling in today. I was happy to hear previous commenters talk about the abuse of the homeless population, particularly with the latest enforcement policies. I wanted to give you some numbers here in San Diego. San Diego has in the city 1.38 million people, and there are 1,731 officers. However, 73 of those are dedicated to the 3,000 homeless people that live unsheltered on the streets of San Diego. So the general population has 1.25 officers per 1,000, and we have 24. So if you want to talk about the potential for abuse and certainly psychological trauma from a constant enforcement, that is exactly what is happening right now. We see and hear of not only issues with law enforcement engagement, but systemic issues within our own homeless services system, where people are not making accommodations for people with disabilities, particularly those with mental health disabilities. On top of that, chronic homelessness doubled in San Diego in 2022 and went up an additional 20% this year. Chronic homelessness are those that have been on our streets for over a year or three or more times in their lifetime and a disability. Well, I have to tell you, as you well know, you have a disability if you've been living on our streets for a year. Many people cannot enter our shelters. We just this year have had 2 stabbings, a shooting, and now there's a recent report of gang rape in one of our shelters that is unconfirmed. I will also add that many people out there, particularly our seniors, cannot access any shelter at all because we have no reasonable accommodation for them. We cannot help you if you cannot meet your
Give you a
ADLs.
30-second warning.
So, and I thank you. My point in all this is I'm really happy to hear about this new law. However, the problem is there isn't an enforcement mechanism. Unlike domestic violence or sexual assault, which must be reported by law enforcement and must be investigated, there are no enforcement mechanisms, especially if in the case where there may be claims of abuse by law enforcement.
Okay,
We
thank you
need
so
tools.
much. We're going to need to move on. We have a lot
Thank
of
you.
people on Zoom with hands raised. So let's keep going. Do we have somebody else? Okay.
Good evening. Hi, can you, can,
We can hear you.
thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Sandy Muskowski. I am a member of Lived Experience Advisors. You were just listening to our director, John Brady, speak about our situation with homelessness here in San Diego. I have lived experience in homelessness. My homelessness started with multiple experiences of job discrimination because of my disabilities. While living homeless after I had exhausted my savings numerous times, I experienced discrimination based on my disabilities throughout the system, by law enforcement, by staff members, by shelters, even by going to a restaurant with my service dog. And I really appreciate everything that you guys are discussing here this evening and all of the work that you're doing. In addition to, we need extensive state oversight systems regarding protections for people with disabilities. A lot of action does happen at the local level, as someone on this meeting did state, but we need our local authorities to be held accountable, and we especially need to address this regarding coming from a disability rights stance in order to protect our most vulnerable populations. And this is our people with disabilities and our seniors that are living on our streets. We also need to invest in building a workforce that can serve our aging populations and our populations with disabilities. We need to come up with creative ways to encourage people to become educated and get advanced degrees, to become the workforce that we need to serve our communities with disabilities, so that we can not only find ways to hold law enforcement and other authority systems accountable for discrimination based on disabilities, but also to be an alternative workforce to help people with disabilities, instead of having to turn to law enforcement. And we're going to need a vast workforce to serve our communities, because we don't have enough people working in behavioral health, in social work. We don't even have enough people to fill IHSS caregiver needs for people that struggle to meet their ADLs when they do have housing, let alone when they do not have housing. And as John Brady mentioned, people, especially here in San Diego, who cannot meet their ADLs are not able to access shelters and are therefore experiencing further criminalization and discrimination, and just horrible situations on our streets. I experienced this myself while I lived homeless. I also witnessed it every day, living adjacent to one of our major shelters, watching people be criminalized and pushed every day, unable to find a safe place to sleep. It exacerbates people's conditions. So again, I thank you all so much for this
Thank you.
conversation and everything
Thank you
you're
so
doing.
much. Okay, let's keep going. Somebody else on Zoom?
Yes, good evening. My name is Frida Lu. Is the echo gone? Okay. My name is Rita Fernandez Loof, and I'm a member of the San Bernardino County Board, Area B, which is the west end of San Bernardino County. One issue that my constituents have raised to my attention is the litigation by school districts against students with disabilities. In California, we have the Brown Act to ensure that decisions are made by elected officials and that the public is aware. But for students with disabilities, these laws are not equally applied. Essentially, students with disabilities are treated as second-class citizens because decisions to sue them to deny special education services are not being made by elected officials. Instead, administrators and for-profit law firms are suing students with disabilities without any transparency and without any board approval. In some cases, millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars are being spent. So I urge this entity to look into this issue and also to support legislation to clarify that the Brown Act also applies to students with disabilities. People with disabilities are also part of We the People. Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to keep moving on, okay.
Bridget Wallman.
Bridget.
Hi, can you hear me now? Okay, cool. Hey, so yes, my name is Bridget. I am with with an independent living center in LA. I am the program coordinator for the Stop the Hate department, which is where people can report hate incidences and hate crimes. I just want to echo everybody's comments. You know, there's discrimination when it comes to housing, you know, discrimination on the streets, everything that you said, it's all an issue. I'm really happy to hear that the person before me brought up the issue about discrimination when it comes to schools, because that's personally my experience with somebody with invisible disability. A lot of times teachers find either give half the accommodation for the student because they fear that it's cheating, or you know, it's just a hassle when it comes to certain colleges just to get a reasonable accommodation. So there's a lot of still discrimination when it comes to schools, especially since since schools all have different levels of how they address accommodations. There's schools out there that don't know what resources are available. There's free assistive technology that could be easily given to different students. One thing I wanted to really highlight is how do we prevent hate with the younger generation, right? So SB 48, the FAIR Act in 2011, was made to make sure that schools are teaching LGBT, gay, bisexual, transgender, American, and persons with disabilities. Schools are supposed to be teaching history that of disability leaders, and they're not. I've actually went to several different schools and I asked teachers and I said, hey, are you teaching disability history? And they said no. So I have actually created a full-on document of different states who currently already teach disability history, advocacy, leaderships, the section 504 signing. And I had put it into a document so we can really push for this in California. You know, I believe there's 3 other states who already teach it. Why isn't California teaching it? This was passed in 2011 and nobody's teaching it. So I would love to talk to somebody, you know, show the documentations of what I create and try to get this pushed forward so we can create diversity in our education. Thank you.
So much.
Leon? Levi GF Leon.
Leela?
Levi.
Hi, my name is Levi Giappaleone. I experienced homelessness early as an LGBT youth and also a person with disabilities. I wanted to say too on the where it stands with homelessness. I also wanted to speak on being an outreach worker because last year I was working on the what they call the ERF, Encampment Resolution funds, to do outreach. And we had just on one very tiny city block by the post office, like 9 people in wheelchairs at all times. And the amount of constant shuffle, you can't be here, we can't tell you where to go, all the shelters are full and they don't accommodate you. That was like a daily part of the struggle that all of like we had to really, you know, face. And I also wanted to say too that now that I am living next to Central Hospital here, every single morning I make a point to drive by the hospital, and the amount of discharges that they are kicking people out of the hospital. And sometimes they're not, and in my experience as an outreach worker, sometimes these people aren't even unhoused. They just have been so overwhelmed by this experience of whatever led them to the hospital. And they end up like sleeping and waking up on the streets, and like a couple days of that, and so I just think that needs to be addressed, because we can't we can't have that in this beautiful state. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, Monica.
Deborah Cam.
Deborah.
Hi there. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. My name is Deborah Cam. I am the Southern California Chair on the Office of Administrative Hearings Special Education Advisory Committee. I'm also a special education advocate for children. I'm very concerned about agencies who are supposed to uphold civil rights for children, who are actually violating the rights of children with disabilities. As a few of the previous callers have mentioned, school districts are really one of the culprits. And instead of providing not just accommodations, but services, school districts like Irvine Unified in Orange County are actually suing children with disabilities. And Irvine Unified was profiled in the Wall Street Journal recently for spending over 1 million tax dollars suing one child with a disability. This obviously is not a fair fight. Parents cannot fight these huge agencies that have unlimited resources. And as one of the previous callers mentioned, this is all happening without the school board approval. And when that happens, if the school boards don't know about this litigation, that means that just random employees are filing this litigation. And that means the public is not aware of the litigation. So that really needs to be rectified by OAH verifying that the boards really are approving this litigation against students. Another issue that is happening right now is the California Department of Education is taking up to 5 months to investigate allegations of school districts breaking the law. And per federal law, the CDE only has 60 days to investigate and come up with a conclusion. And they're taking 4 and 5 months now. This is a real problem that Governor Newsom and the legislature really needs to address immediately. This is a severe violation of the rights of children. And as you know, when they are missing services or accommodations for many, many months, it has a huge long-term effect. So the California Department of Education really has to follow the law as well. Thank you.
Michelle Del Rosario.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Del Rosario. I'm a parent to a 24-year-old with autism who is non-speaking and types to communicate. I would like to speak to his civil right to access communication. In this meeting, for example, we have cut off the chat. It's disabled. That is how he communicates. He types. He would not be able to access this meeting. A short while ago, the computer screen got very scattered. We could not see the ASL interpreter. How would he notify you if he couldn't type that? How would a person who is deaf? The systems that are supposed to be supporting and serving our children are putting up these barriers. As an adult, his barrier to regional center services right now is that he cannot, or they cannot, vendor with a communication specialist who could train staff. This has been 4 years waiting because they cannot receive the training because the Regional Center, Orange County, will not vendor. We had that same fight in the education system. The person that spoke before about Irvine Unified, we're not in that district, but we're in a surrounding district. And the same thing happened. 10 months to order an iPad for my son after going through assessment after assessment after assessment. We fought that fight. We're fighting it now. He has an iPad. It is not a matter of giving him an iPad. It's a matter of giving him the staffing, giving him the accessibility. We're sitting in on the master plan, literally begging. And it's not just him. There are many of us, the Hispanic community speaking Spanish, literally begging for them to engage the chat. They will not. They've invited us to sit at the table, but we're sitting at the children's table where we're seen but not heard. I think the systems need to start with giving us accessibility. All of the previous discrimination and concerns about being unhoused, medical, that starts with communication. He wouldn't even have a chance to tell somebody that, you know, he had a medical condition or that he had been neglected or abused without communication. Thank you.
Rick Black.
Yes, my name is Rick Black. I'm this executive director of CEAR, the Center for Estate Administration Reform. We work with regional coordinators across the U.S. and have several in California. I just want to thank this committee and commission for creating this forum tonight, because this is a hot topic, as you can tell. And sadly, as those of us who advocate on a national basis have come to understand, California is a mess. You've heard, I just want to echo all the complaints that we've heard tonight, because from the criminal court system, the civil court system, the equity court system, child custody, divorce, adult guardianship, and probate, we see vulnerable adults, the disabled, mental health issues, seniors certainly, being exploited quite often, to the point of an earlier speaker, by the organizations that claim to be advocating for these individuals. And in all of these cases, there are predatory attorneys who are making money off of the disenfranchising of this community. I only appeal to the panel. Let's decide what's our priority in Sacramento for 25 and beyond. We are big proponents of better rights for these people in the courtrooms where their rights are taken away. The $14 billion that the state spent on care courts, only been in operation now for 2 years. There are glaring issues with that court, namely lack of representation, but secondarily secrecy, that is causing those courts to participate in the exploitation of vulnerable Californians. So thanks for taking on the topic of hate, or how do you disenfranchise the mind of mean. But we got a long way to go, and it's up to us who are here and who care to take a stronger stance to reduce the victimization. Thank you.
Dana Ernest.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. Hi, thank you so much to everyone who's here, and I so much appreciate the work that you're doing. I am a PhD student at the UCs, and I'm a former fellow for the Initiative to Study Hate, where I focus on hate-based phenomena within institutions, primarily academic. I've also been fortunate enough to work with the University of California Disability Lab, headed by Dr. Nakamura. And there are so many relevant and urgent issues I could comment on, but I'm going to limit it to just a few. The first is that the issues with data and with the FBI statistics and state statistics that is something that I experienced also in my research through the Initiative to Study Hate, the lack of intersectional data. And I want to encourage perhaps looking also to qualitative research. So the kind of research that, let's say, the University of California Disability Lab does is all about how to work with people with lived experience and how to incorporate that lived experience and intersectional identity into everything that we do, whether it's research, policy, or otherwise. I also think it's very important to think cross-culturally, even though we're all in the same state. Some of the points that Dr. Nakamura made were extremely important. I also wanted to talk about age. I so much appreciate the efforts for, linking together sort of age and elderly with disability. But I also want to encourage people to remember that there are also young people with disability, including many, many students. And I've worked on the topic of academic ableism in higher education. And it's not enough to wait to tell someone to consider disabled people as humans because they one day might become disabled. I think we need to instill a value in people who are disabled, regardless of whether or not one day someone might become disabled, as its own intrinsic important thing. And I guess my last thing was just a question for Greg. My one question was, when you said that the figures are not as grim as the calls you receive from the Sacramento office, and that you say you can't help, I wanted to know why, because that was really emotionally, sort of got me. And I hope one day you are able to say you can help. Thank you all so much for this important work. I would like to encourage an entire unit or year or something that focuses on disability and its intersections under the rubric of hate, because clearly there are so many important issues. Thank you.
We get a huge variety of calls, many of them are able to, we're not as racist, we're able to, minority, but
Sorry, I can't hear the speaker.
Will.
Yeah, hopefully we'll go back because we couldn't hear that speaker, but I'll go ahead and speak. Wilderness Rose, they, them, lived experience, ADHD, autism, also now mother of a 26-year-old daughter who just got diagnosed with brain cancer, and I'm struggling with insurance neglect and all that stuff. But I worked in both shelters and street outreach in San Diego and Alameda County, and I can wholeheartedly assert and attest to the lack of accountability to the widespread abuse in the shelters and on the streets, particularly towards individuals with disabilities. In my efforts to implement trauma-informed care and require case notes that documented de-escalation techniques, I faced significant pushback, including false accusations against me from my staff who did not like this concept. In a women's shelter, I advocated for showers to be open all night for people with disabilities, and I was brought to HR and told that I was favoring certain clients over others, and I was written up. My staff worked hard to get me fired at several jobs for being trauma-informed. I reported to local city councils, housing commissions, and OSHA with no response. It wasn't until I went to a local media outlet that proved my comments about abuse was happening that the local city people got involved and held the shelters accountable. But I found myself ostracized in this city and needed to change cities where I worked. Clients often face scrutiny and blame because they simply ask questions or seek necessary accommodations. Staff roll their eyes, refuse accommodations, and find ways to kick these clients out. This mistreatment goes unaccounted for because these clients cannot fill out the proper documentation and meet with the proper people over and over again, telling their stories and reliving the trauma. We need less training and more accountability for these shelters and the street workers and the police who are on the street. I would call for a mandated task force that is statewide and not local, because the local communities are not fulfilling their accountability and providing accommodations, trauma-informed care, and de-escalation techniques in either cities, Alameda County, Berkeley. I worked in Berkeley, I worked in Oakland, I worked in San Francisco, I worked in San Diego. None of these cities had accountability for exits that were done improperly or any of the abuse that was happening in the shelters. Thank you.
Reina, sí.
Good evening. As we approach a monumentally important election, I think we need to be mindful and proactive in ensuring that people with disabilities have access to cast a vote and are not disenfranchised and silenced. Voting is a key to how people with disabilities, their advocates, and allies can fight against the hate and vote to allocate critical resources that people with disabilities need to be able to thrive. I'm very interested in hearing what the Office of Civil Rights is doing to uphold the federal voting rights of people with disabilities during the upcoming election. Thank you.
Natalie? Natalie?
Oh, unmute. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. Okay. Hi. So I'm Natalie Rashke with Lived Experience Advisors here in San Diego. And what was stated earlier about being on the streets for a certain period of time, me and my family, I have 4 children, were homeless for 2.5 years. The anxiety and mental depletion of my children due to policing, we had no one to call to say that we were being harassed. And the police, I don't think, took into consideration or were not unaware or don't have the training to understand that every time they came and spoke to us, it caused trauma to my children. Who or what are we doing to make sure that we have somebody to call and make these complaints to when our children are involved? We can't call the police and you know, do we call the police and say, hey, I feel like I'm being harassed, we're unhoused? As much contact as we had with the police has now traumatized and caused some mental, you know, anguish, and I don't know if you call it mental disability, to my children. So every day, you know, we're housed now, but anytime there's a police or they think we're going to get pulled over if we're driving, has brought up these issues that were not issues prior to becoming homeless. I don't know if that's a question or a statement, but I'm just curious of how we can address that, or, you know, I believe it needs to be addressed. That's it. Thank you.
Phyllis Kalbach?
Yes, hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Phyllis. And I work with Rick Black. I'm an advocate. I work with his organization. My father was in his 90s. He was diagnosed with severe dementia. My brother, my sister, and I were taking turns. We were taking care of him. He was then befriended by professional criminals. And I was point blank told to my face, Phyllis, you really don't understand. We're taking everything he's got, everything. And there's nothing you can do about it. I went to my family. We went to the police. We went to social services. We went to the VA. We went to the state attorney general's office. We went and we went to the media, and over again, we were told, no, there's nothing we can do about it. Not our problem. We finally ended up going to the courts where we were directed. Then he disappeared. We had no idea where he was. Mind you, a man in his 90s with severe dementia, diagnosed. We were looking for him everywhere. Finally, when we found him, it was really too late. These people had taken him to Tennessee, where he had never been. After the lawyers and the fiduciary, who was instructed by the court to represent him, set him in a room and had him sign his house and his properties, which he owned a lot of properties around the United States, and over to them, which we found out, and the criminals spent his retirement money by taking out loans against his pensions. After they were finished with him, they took him out into the city, opened the door of the car, and threw him out in the street. 95 years old. And when we finally found him, because we had all people looking for him, we were told that he was picked up, he was badly injured, he was taken to the hospital, and he died, and he's buried in Tennessee. What the story of this is that we got no help, not from anybody, not from the police, not from anybody. I was elected to be on the executive board for the California State Democratic Party. I spoke about this at the convention. People started coming up to me, like rape victims, saying something similar happened to me, to my mother. I couldn't protect them. Nobody would help me. Nobody. So that is the way I got involved. And I'm working very hard to take this out of, hey, there's nothing we can do about it, to, yes, we are going to solve this problem and make these criminals responsible and stop this abuse. And the where this comes into hate crime is the absolute indifference, the coldness from our police and from the social services. They said, hey, so what do you want me to do about it? Hey, if he wants to go live in the streets, so what?
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next person on Zoom.
Ariane Diady. We can't hear you if you're speaking.
Hi.
Oh,
you good now? Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, good. All right. I have 3 points here to just. All right. One is it must separate the number for calls related to disability, abuse, and hate crimes from 911. That just completely disconnect from the police. Have people, that's number 2, have people trained on abuse, disabilities, and with lived experience with both disability and homelessness to address issues of abuse in disabled and elderly homeless population. And 3, most abused disability population is in our homeless, the homeless population. And there is zero enforcement or accountability of these new laws. How are you going to enforce these laws and accountability? One thing I ask you, please, to eliminate the police from this equation. Thank you.
We'll go on to our next Zoom comment.
Sandy Kobanachi?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Hey, my name is Sandy Kobianki. I live in Southern California. I'm the Southern California regional person for Rick Black and SEER. SEER stands for the Center for Elderly Administration Reform. Rick kind of put it in a general form, but there is so much information and so much going on with this subject that it's just hard to cover in 3 minutes. I'm going to give you a couple of resources that those are interested can read up on this. This is a problem. The probate court corruption is a problem across state lines. It doesn't see race, color, wealth, or anything else. Britney Spears is a classic example of what can happen. So it doesn't matter who you are. My mom was in an abusive conservatorship. I wasn't allowed to call her. I wasn't allowed to go to her board and care home. I wasn't allowed to wish her happy birthday, call her and tell her I love her, wish her Merry Christmas, Happy Mother's Day. Everything was controlled. The probate court takes total power of attorney and takes over the whole estate and decision making. I do want to say that one of the people that spoke earlier, I think the gal was there, that had to do with nursing homes or nursing facilities. I wanted to urge her to in her platform to let the employees know at these facilities, just know that this is happening. This has been out there now. We're beginning to get a lot of leeway with awareness that give the families the benefit of the doubt. You see kids and family members there, they're present, they're sacrificing their time. They clearly care for their parents or whoever it may be, their loved ones. Tell those workers to not be scared. The conservator isn't there. They're never there. They're not going to find out. Be kind and let children hug and talk to their parents, or do whatever they need to do when they're visiting their parents, even if they have to watch, but don't cower to the probate courts and these conservators that all they want is your money and total control and total power of attorney. So I wanted to urge her because she's in that arena. I also wanted to say that the Social Society Administration does, and I think the gentleman earlier said that dementia is considered a disability. And I feel like the cruelty and the hate, it just goes unwarranted. There were many times I was at the door at my mom's facility and she would hear my voice. My mom was cognizant. She knew me. She knew us. She wasn't to the stage where she didn't recognize us. And she would hear my voice and I could hear my mom say, "Is that my daughter?" And they'd tell me, "If you don't leave, we're going to call the police." How cruel is that? Where are we living? What country are we living in that this is going on? And this is going on everywhere. Don't kid yourself. We've had friends and family. Oh, that doesn't happen here. That wouldn't happen in my family. It is happening everywhere. I need people to understand that it's not just about the money. I couldn't understand why they wanted control of my mom, and they were fighting. The three of us, 4 kids, were fighting to take care of her, take her in. We had the resources, the money, and everything. What I didn't know then that I know now with my advocacy work is that every senior, at least in California, is worth about $250,000 to $350,000 in state and federal funding. So that's what they want. These courts, these judges, these GALs, these attorneys for the guardians, they're trying to get your money. I'll leave you with resources because I can go.
Thank you. Yeah. Sandy, we're going to need to end it with you, but thank you for your comments.
Natalie? We can't hear you if you're speaking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having this meeting. It is really great to hear all the speakers. So my name is Natalie Reich. I live in San Diego, and I'm a single mom to a minor child with disabilities. Before we even moved into the Del Mar Union School District, the school lied to me and said they didn't have a summer camp because I had told them that he had an IEP. So that was how it started. And that was about 13 years ago. Fast forward 13 years ago, the retaliation and discrimination never ended. I had to eventually file an injunction in federal court to ask the judge, for a restraining order to stop discrimination and retaliation. And in response, their Joint Powers Authority risk management attorney, he's a government attorney, his name is Daniel Shenoff, went across the street to the Superior Court and filed a fraudulent restraining order without, school board approval. He signed it under penalty of perjury. didn't tell me about it. When that restraining order was denied, he then went and filed another one based on for my son's new teacher, who I had only met briefly. And then he filed that one, and that was granted. I wasn't there. And then he filed another one for the school. He signed them all under penalty of perjury, lied, called me a school shooter. It defamed my son, paraded teachers in for months, all talking about my son's disabilities. The judges saying that it's okay to bully kids, that I cannot ask for IEP meetings. This is all transcribed. You would not believe this criminal activity. They're running a criminal enterprise here in San Diego. These lawyers and these judges are suing children, abusing children. The judge in his order says that I am not allowed to, he finds it disgusting that I am complaining about abuse for a child. My son missed 40 days, over 40 days of school. He met alone with the staff in violation of, my due process rights multiple times. For them, this was all fun. This is a serious hate crime. Because of the restraining orders, my son had no parents at his graduation. He went into that school 14 years ago as the happiest child you would ever know. Now I cannot breathe every minute because of the severe damage that he's done. I've gone to the DA. They say it's a civil issue. I've gone to the FBI. They have not called me back. I'm sorry?
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Bye-bye.
Maria Isabel Arias.
Good evening. My name is Maria Isabel Arias. I am the candidate for the San Bernardino County Board of Education. And I'm here also to expose discriminatory practices and litigation within the special education in our local school districts. I have firsthand experience when my 19-year-old daughter got sued by Fontana Unified School District. And when I did the Public Record Act request, and I asked for the board meeting and the board agenda and the board minutes where the litigation was discussed and initiated, I came to learn that it was not brought to the board district's attention. And in fact, an administrator had initiated the due process of suing my child. And of course, this is alarming because this is a Brown Act violation, and it's also a violation of my child's rights. And so I brought this to their attention. I asked for them to cease and desist. And I got a lengthy letter from their legal counsel, AALRR, and which stated that they were within their rights to sue my child, that they felt it was okay to litigate and use tax funds. So I've been bringing to the attention of the public. I started the YouTube movement in 2017, and I've been documenting and putting all this information out to the public. And it's outrageous how much money they're spent. I just had a 504 meeting for my son, and they decided to bring their legal counsel without informing the parents in writing, without letting us know. And they had the audacity to say, oh, we're not being here litigious. We're just here to help out. And when I asked them to respectfully to leave the meeting, they got out of hand and they said, we're not leaving, and we're gonna be here at every single 504 meeting for your son. Tell me if they don't wanna just be litigious and they just wanna get on and expand taxpayer funds, because these are litigious companies that are charging school districts by the hour. My school district alone has a contract with this company for $350,000 a year. That's the 1 year alone that they're spending on litigation. And yet they have no services for our children. They cannot teach them how to read. So I am here to expose all this litigation going on. And please look me up, Maria Isabel Arias and the YouTube movement. And we're gonna continue exposing all these wasteful practices to litigate against our poor, defenseless, special needs children. Thank you for this opportunity. Look forward to continue this conversation. Thank you.
Juan Campbell. If you're speaking, we can hear you. Juan? Oh. Okay. Juan, we'll come back to you. Teresa Brown. If you're speaking, we can hear you.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Teresa. I'm a mom of 2 children with special needs, and I have 2 adult children. And the school district has not been collaboratively working with me. And I think in general, our system is set up to abuse anybody who is impoverished, low income, who has a disability, who just has any even differences where they may be not as talkative. I was assaulted by a Medi-Cal dentist in California. It cost $1 million of medical care to fix $5,000 worth of dental damage because he assaulted me, and I'm now without teeth. All because I'm a Medi-Cal recipient. They just treat us like garbage. And while I was in the hospital in critical care, I was having to do my son's IEP meetings and facilitate him getting services. And the school knew that. And instead of being collaborative, they were gossiping. They were talking to my son's peers. They were talking to other family members, violating privacy rights and altering documents. They ended up deleting his entire 7th grade record. It is childish the way the schools are behaving. These are grown people that are acting almost as immature as the students that they're teaching. The dentists, the doctors, the advocates that are supposed to be helping us, some of us, are just as childish and causing as much or if not more damage, and is causing trauma, generational trauma. My son had to witness a dentist assault his mom because he didn't want to deal with a Medi-Cal patient, which then cost a lot of money and took me away from him, and then watched the school make his life hard and my life hard because of another issue that somebody else caused me, which made me look different, right? I now kind of have what some people would consider a drug addict look because I'm missing teeth because of what the dentist did to me, right? So now I got the school treating me different, and then making my children, just because my kids have a reading disability, that alone targets them to be treated differently. It's rough. It's very childish. And the amount of documentation that I have of all this is crazy. Like, I have an entire book already, a manuscript printed with documents of all of this. And it's like, it's sad. We're America. Like, we're a first world country. And it is so sad. It is heartbreaking that we're treating each other different and assaulting and deliberately causing children and parents heartaches and grief, all to save what, $1, instead of putting relationships.
For sharing. We're
Thank
going to
you.
need to move on to our next Zoom comment, but thank you. Juan Campbell?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Uh,
Can you hear me?
yes.
I don't know how. Hold on.
Well, if you're speaking, we can't hear you right now.
Uh,
Juan? Oh, okay. This, well,
Good evening, everyone. My name is Viviana Barnwell. I am a council member at the State Council on Developmental Disabilities representing the Central Coast. But here I am as a parent of an 11-year-old boy with multiple developmental disabilities. I just wanted to share with you one of the most unexpected places where students with disabilities get discriminated, and that is field trips and the famous 5th grade science camp. I had an incident with my son 2 years ago when he was in 4th grade and they are taken to Sacramento, where he was taken with no supports, no one-on-one. After a lot of negotiation, I was almost made conditional that I had to be there so he could participate. During that day, I witnessed my son in a corner with no supports. No one was tending to his physical, academic, or any need. And we presented the complaint to the district. This is San Jose Unified. We presented it to the board. We presented it to the director of special education. No one ever responded to us. I ended filing a complaint with the Department of Education, with the OCRA, and they found for us, a couple of weeks ago, we found that they did say my son was discriminated in reason of his disability. And still we haven't heard from the district. No apologies, no why they did it. And I just wanted to bring to your attention that something that is so important for kids, any kid, that is participation in recreational activities, is denied and conditioned on children who have disabilities. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
okay. Monica, do we want to go next person? Oh. Oh. Juan?
Juan Campbell here. Can you hear?
Yep.
Okay. All right. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who has commented. It gave me a lot of information that I concur with. As a victim, as a young senior, and also physically handicapped recently, about a year ago, and I was in the facilities, the rehabilitation and nursing homes. Big eye opener. Big eye opener. I was not only fighting for my health that I was in there for, broken back, broken leg, and collarbone. I was fighting to just get things done. I had my family from Chicago call in, and it's just like you're incarcerated in this Twilight Zone type theory, to where, you know, this is what we got. This is what you're in here for. Deal with it. If not, you know, and you can go someplace else if you want to. Yeah, well, I took them up on that offer and I tried to get out, and the fight they put up on me, physically, mentally, emotionally, was one that was unbearable. I can only say now I'm doing home care, so I have attendants come to my home and they take care of me here, and I feel not only free, I feel so much at peace. Thank you. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Tao Tran. I'm a parent of a child with a neurodevelopmental disability. And I wanted to share my comment in terms of, for those who are have anywhere moderate to severe disability. We just had a case in Elk Grove where a child got slapped by an aide, and the aide they instructed the school team instructed the aide to not tell the parent at pickup that the child got slapped by their staff. So right now we know that there's no cameras in the classroom, but what can we do so that these kids who don't have a voice or maybe impaired, what could we do to protect this population? Because they should not be traumatized throughout their entire school career. Thank you.
No public comment on Zoom. Yes.
The first is from Taylor Jarnajan. Hi, my name is Taylor Jarnajan. I'm a peer specialist for Care Court. I'm so appreciative of the awareness you are bringing to the table regarding mental health disabilities. I see often in the community, hotel owners showing stigma towards our members, often not allowing them to rent rooms at their establishment. When I first started this position in January 2024, a hotel kicked out one of our members during the state of emergency flooding because they presented quote unquote disabled. Their room was messy, but no worse than many rooms I've seen in my past as a housekeeper when I was younger. This was a rude awakening for me. We were able to advocate for our member and remind the hotel that they cannot kick them out during a state of emergency. This type of situation occurs continuously with comments like, "Don't you have somewhere else to go?" Raising awareness for mental health disabilities can help empathy grow, and we as a community can act more collectively to protect our vulnerable population. Our members are the bravest people I know. Thank you.
Thank you. Are any other email comments?
Yes.
Okay.
This one is in Spanish, so I'm just gonna translate it.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Carolina Villaseñor. I want to thank everyone for this forum and all the information that's so important for our community. I really admire what these have done. I hope that you continue to share this information and spread more awareness about people in this community. I hope that you keep advancing to continue these conversations and to speak up for this community. I hope that this can be a small step for change. And a step for bettering the world. Thank you.
Great. Any other emails?
No more comment via email.
Okay. I'm gonna turn it over to let commissioners or anyone up here with any comments, but we're gonna have to keep it short because we're actually only have the room to 8:30 and we still have Zoom comments from the public on anything that's not on the agenda. So if any of the commissioners or would like to say anything, let's go ahead and if you can raise your hands, we'll start with comments. Anyone? Okay, Brian.
This is a devastating tragedy that we have going on in this state. And I want to thank all the participants. I also want to thank Greg for helping get this commission through the legislature. The FBI just came out with data this week. It's extraordinarily flawed. But one thing that we saw with the reported data, which is barely the tip of the iceberg, was only about 202 disability hate crimes nationally of both kinds. Even with that, the overall increase, which was flawed because we had major cities left out or substantially left out, half of the victims in the initial LAPD, this is overall, did not make it into the state or the federal data. There's a differential of about over 100 from Chicago. Those alone would materially change the national increase. Nevertheless, the increase in anti-disability hate crime for 2023, which is the latest federal data, showed an increase that was 5 times at 10%, 5 times the 2%, which came from incomplete data to begin with. And Dr. Nakamura, followed your work. What an honor. Thank you. And this is the reason why we wanted a commission. The legislature, Greg saw it. Eric would be on a line. We'd have 20 people and they'd all get a minute or two. That's why I want to thank our commissioners, Cuellar and Filer, for doing this. I want to thank the Civil Rights Department. I want to thank the council. This is so important. And I promise you, we're going to keep looking at this. This is devastating. And I say that as someone whose own family had disabled people that were victimized as well. So I just want to give a heartfelt thank you to the Civil Rights Department, to my fellow commissioners, and to our wonderful set of speakers tonight. Thank you. We will roll up our sleeves and try to do more, and you can contact me obviously anytime. Thank you.
Anyone from the Civil Rights Council that would like to speak?
I completely agree. I think we also have a really unique opportunity because of California versus hate. One of the things that I looked at the initial report was the fact that our California data mirrored the national data, that the hate in California that was reported was primarily race, religion, and gender, and not disability. I know now when I try entering data, it does ask, why do you perceive that you might have been a victim of hate? And so because you have that body, I think it's a really exciting opportunity to now flip that over to see what that intersectionality shows. And if we can show that reporting, what that might change, right? We have that ability with your body. I think that's an exciting opportunity.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been a really enlightening evening. And I just keep hearing the phrase in my head, there but for the grace of God go I. There have been times in my life where I experienced living with a disability. Sometimes a mental disability, sometimes an emotional one, sometimes a physical one. And I'm really touched by the people who talked about the awareness that as we get older, our bodies will fail us in multiple ways. And things that we are used to being able to take for granted as part of our daily functioning may not be there for us always. We may not always be who we think we were. And so many of the stories we heard tonight are just breaking, absolutely heartbreaking and tragic. And I'm so grateful for the awareness. I wanted to lift up something that I heard when I was doing work with veterans with dual disabilities, with substance abuse and mental diagnoses. And what they told me is they wanted to drop the D from the PTSD because as far as they were concerned, the reactions they were experiencing were a normal response to an abnormal situation of war. And they did not think that what they were living with was therefore a disorder. And they thought that being labeled with a disorder was further disabling to them. So I carry that with me as a point of education for folks who work with people with disabilities. And thanks again to everyone here tonight.
Thank you.
Can't see down there if there was anyone else who wanted to. Okay, Regina.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody for being here today and the speakers, the presenters, but most importantly, the public. You know, again, we're here to really listen and learn. And I think I've learned a lot tonight, a lot of the issues and I've never heard before. So again, thank you for that. And I know, to all the public, thank you for hanging in here with us. It's been a long night, but we hear you, we're listening to you, and, you know what, we're gonna make California better. So thank you guys so much for all of that.
And just in following with our agenda, if there's any public comments on anything not on the agenda that somebody would like to say right now in the room, please raise your hand. Okay. On Zoom? Okay.
Val Tran, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi there. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. Just a comment, non-agenda, but I just want to say that I think the statistic is 1 in 5 or 1 in 4. Disability is a part of the human experience, and there's a lot of talent out there, but people don't know because of how ableist our community is. So I do want to share with everyone here is that by Robert Hansel is that there is no greater disability in society other than the inability to see a person as more. We may have kids with disabilities, whether they're not speaking, hear, see, but you look at history, Helen Keller, David Hartman, the first blind psychiatrist. We have amazing talent. We need to really, help this community and stop these oppressive systems, such as school districts, from fighting us, saying the attorneys, because that's not how you treat a human being. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
The person's name is Zoom user.
Sí, buenas noches a todos. Antes que nada, mi nombre es Lucero Hernández. Gracias por invitarme y es un honor estar participando. Yo quiero mencionar, yo vivo en el condado de Sonoma. Quiero mencionar sobre las escuelas de Santa Rosa. El distrito de Santa Rosa desafortunadamente también ha cometido demasiadas discriminaciones contra nuestros niños, jóvenes y adultos. En esta desigualdad y equidad que realmente siento que las personas que están trabajando para el distrito y la escuela abusan de su poder de posición de trabajo para romper el sistema y proporcionar la educación especial a los niños con discapacidades.
Do we have a translation? Okay.
Carlos, can you come over the English channel, please? Griselda, from what you heard, can you summarize what the participant said?
With how sometimes the schools also abuse and still discriminate a lot of students. So it was a comment around discrimination that exists around the school district and how students suffer from that discrimination.
Okay,
Thank you, Griselda, very much.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any other comments on Zoom? Okay.
Gracias.
Sarissa Brown, I'm going to allow you to talk.
Hi. I like following the law. I think, I take pride in that, right? I want to be able to follow the rules and regulations. I want to make sure that I'm working well with the people that I have to work well with, be it medical doctors, dentists, lawyers, school team, other, professionals that may work. And I think having the law more accessible. I have a disability. Mine is being able to speak up for myself when I'm under stress. And I have a neighbor of mine. She has pretty profound dyslexia, and we found it to work for us. She's good to, like, what some people may call clap back, right? She can speak fast for herself and defend herself verbally, whereas I'm a speed reader. I read really fast, but I don't speak up for myself very well. So we found what works for us. But working with her, I realized that access to the rules and regulations and laws to help guide us and what is really supposed to be going on is really inaccessible. And I think really making the laws accessible in multiple formats, audio where we can click a button and have it read to us, highlight, large font, just a search engine that may be more sensitive to a diverse language, right? Where instead of having key legal terms, I think making the law more accessible to people who want to follow the law, I think would be a benefit. Thank you.
I think this will be our last Zoom comment. Go ahead, Monica.
Maria Avila, 78. If you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I had a question and a comment. I have my son who is in first grade. He has been diagnosed with ADHD. He has some behaviors in the classroom. We move into a new school. Now the teachers have, the administrator has said that they have done everything they can for him, and they don't have the resources to help him and provide a less restricted environment for him to learn. So their option, they said at this point, is to send him to a special day class. So change him from just the disability of ADHD to a special education. I don't agree with that. Is there anything else that I can do? Where should I go to? Somebody have advice that I should hire an educational advocate. We don't have the funds to do that. So is there anything else that we can do for my son?
Okay. No, we've noted that. Also, I'm going to encourage anyone with any questions or comments to email it to us at csh@calcivilrights.ca.gov. So if you do have other questions or concerns, please email us. I'm going to let Helena, I'm going to let you kind of close and adjourn us.
Yes. Oops. Yes. Am I on? Yes. This has been a community of over 100 individuals online and in the room. So first and foremost, from a community engagement perspective, thank you for attending, staying on, and participating and being so vulnerable and sharing your stories. We've had two subcommittees from each body, CC, Regina, Denny, and myself, that have helped shape this forum, but the work has been done by incredible civil rights staff, particularly Rebecca Goodsell, Alexandra Sadler, Monica Chavez, and Kevin Thomas. And so I really want to recognize the fabulous curation of incredible presenters with such incredible knowledge and for curating this incredible space. Obviously, the great interpreters, the AV staff, and this meeting is adjourned as of 8:19. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Greg, you were right. This was important.